everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is on the wisdom of the Hobbits, and we have an amazing panel. Thanks for joining us, and I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. And if you are on Facebook, please grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you comment or have a question. Please keep all comments and questions related to the show topic, and remember that this is a safe space. I want to give a big shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much for your generosity and support. If you enjoy the show, consider supporting it. It's as low as $3 a month. You can go to sherrypalace.com. And there are literally dozens of ways to support me and the show. But just being here, welcoming us into your home and joining the conversation supports me more than you know. I appreciate you. And because I appreciate you, I've got something to give you. This year, I am working with the Wild Goose Festival. It will be in North Carolina, July 13th through the 16th. We will be doing a live show there. If you want to go or plan to attend, I have a $50 discount code for you. Simply use my name, make sure you spell it right, and you will receive a $50 discount. You can find out more at wildgoosefestival.org. I would love to see you there. I'm so excited. Okay, let's meet our guests and get a little bit smarter. First, we have Matthew Distefano. Matthew is an author of multiple books, columnist for Patheos, and a co-host of the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, social worker, and hip hop artist. A whole bunch more stuff, but he didn't update his bio. Welcome, Matthew.
Yeah, throw me under the bus. I forgot to update the bio. I know.
I have to,
I know.
It's all in the good of the game.
Hey, creatives, we're not always the best at time management.
Right? As we came in 1 minute before the show. So thank you so much for being here. I love having you here.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah.
Next we have Thomas J. Ord. Thomas is a theologian, philosopher, and scholar of multidisciplinary studies. Ord directs the Center for Open and Relational Theology and Doctoral Studies at Northwind Theological Seminary. He is a best-selling and award-winning author who has written or edited more than 30 books. Welcome back, Tom.
Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
I'm so glad you're here. And last but definitely not least, we have Brian K. Woodson Sr. BK is a best-selling author, organizer, and pastor. Born in the ghettos of Brooklyn, he saw the stratification of society and the violence required to maintain it in its raw and naked forms. The challenge of changing community from that darkness to love is his life's mission. Welcome, BK.
Hey, thanks. And I've read more than 30 books.
Well, that's always good, right?
Yeah. Not all of them were children's books.
Yeah, they were children's books, 4 pages long.
That's right. With pictures.
With pictures, exactly. I love it. What a great way to get this show started. So, at an attempt at full disclosure, I have never really been a Tolkien fan. I have fallen asleep during. Everybody's like, no, hold on.
Okay, I'll give you some time.
In any way, shape, or form. That is the purpose of this show. I want you to give me all of this wisdom. I know, I was like assuming it might be a guy thing because all the guys I know love him. I've only used him to justify the length of my book. But I really want to know what all of this wisdom is. Stephen Colbert is one of my idols, and he loves Tolkien. Tolkien, let's start there. How do you pronounce it? I've heard it so many different ways. Matthew?
Tolkien,
okay. So you just wrote the book, Wisdom of the Hobbits. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what's going on out there.
Well, I mean, where to even begin? I think I've realized that, I mean, my first coming out was as bi, and my second coming out is as a Hobbit. Um,
Okay.
no, I just realized that there's so much practical wisdom found there, and I think Tolkien is intentional with that. I think he kind of puts not necessarily an idealized version of rural UK life, but that's kind of what it is in the Shire. And so he uses them as I think as kind of I don't know, a mirror of how we can live more in tune with each other and the land in simplicity. But there's, as Gandalf says, there's more wisdom to always be learned from them years and years after meeting them.
Well, and that's why I was so interested in this, because I am always up for some wisdom. And being that you wrote a book just on that, I was like, I may have fallen asleep during the movies, but I wanted to know, I wanted to get this wisdom. BK, what have you gotten out of Tolkien?
Life. I'm alive because of
Pardon me?
life itself. I'm alive
Okay.
because of it. No,
Really?
actually,
What?
so Tolkien was the first book I read that I couldn't put down. Well, one of the first ones that I couldn't put down. So as a kid growing up, I was always unsure of my own academic ability, because I was the only African American in an all white German school, right?
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know what that meant. From kindergarten to 8th grade, I didn't know how smart I was because I was always, less smart than than others told me. But when I picked up Tolkien is like, I'm reading Hobbit. I remember over college break, right? It's winter break. And so I started reading this book and I can't put it down. And I get hungry. I still can't put it down. So I say, okay, I got to put it down. I got to put something on it because I'm starving. So I put something on and then I go back to Tolkien. And then it starts burning. I'm burning my food. So it caught me like that. I think the way Tolkien writes, for me, just wrapped me up. No superfluous junk that I don't want to read about. It's just very exciting. And to me, it's about good and evil, right? And the evil is evil. The evil's not like, kind of like it's evil, but it's good. And you choose between the good evil and the bad evil. It's good and there's evil. And I love that. And I also love that it's the power of love, the power of story, right? The power of persistence, the surprise of, the help you get from places you would never expect to get it. So that's all Tolkien. And if you know the ancient tale of the three princes of Serendip, it's kind of like that,
Okay. I have a feeling I'm going to be picking up the book and going, okay, fine. Tom, I have to say this. So when Matthew contacted me about this show, I said, okay, who do you want on it? And I reached out to you. And the best thing ever, audience, Tom responds with, thank you so much, but I really think you should contact Matthew. It was awesome. So tell me, what have you gotten out of Tolkien? What is this wisdom that you have found in this?
Well, if Matthew and BK are the Tolkien experts and you're a Tolkien newbie, I'm
Idiot.
kind of idiot. Okay, I'm kind of somewhere in between. Like I'm a weird person. I like the Lord of the Rings movies better than the books. Like that's like anathema to real Tolkien fans. But I actually like the storytelling in the movies. And so what draws me to the Hobbits, to Matthew's book, but especially to Tolkien, is the storytelling and the main themes that arise out of it. And BK and Matthew have already pointed to some of those.
What is there one thing that you have taken away from any of? I mean, the one thing I've taken away is precious. That's the only thing I got. Love it, but that So there's got to be more, right?
Yeah, well, for me, and Matthew sort of begins his book with this theme, or at least it's early on in his book, I guess, maybe not the beginning, but the idea of an adventure, of going someplace unknown, in which the stakes are high, the choices we make really matter. There's good and evil, as BK mentioned, and we don't know where things are going to end up. That's a theme in Tolkien's writings, in The Hobbit, and in Matthew's book that I think is representative of how we should think about our own lives as an adventure.
I got that as far as the hero's journey. It was, and as soon as I understood that, it was like, okay, maybe I can read this. Maybe I can get into this because I am all about the hero's journey. And if it's being retold in one of those types of forms, it would interest me.
Yeah.
I feel so passionate about that.
Yeah, not only the hero's journey, but it's this question about power, isn't it? So that power is this corrupting thing, right? So as a Christian, right, as a theologian, right, if you imagine Jesus as this powerful person, entity, then how does Jesus not get corrupted by it, right? And that, as Thomas was saying, this is a great metaphor for life, right? We're on this journey, we're making choices, we don't know where we're going to go, right? We are unaware often of the power that we have within ourselves. And then when we become aware of this power, do we use it corruptly, or do we use it in a way that doesn't destroy ourselves and people around us? It's a pretty deep question, right?
That is.
And Matt's book really goes right into that, right? It says, okay, let's take apart. You love that, that scene you loved? All right, let's take that a little part and show you where it's reflecting your own life and the choices that you're making. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think going piggybacking off what BK is saying, and Sherry, the precious and Gollum holding the precious, that can easily be a symbol for the propensity for our desire for power. Okay. And it's almost this imitative pull, like why when Gollum, or Smeagol at the time, why does he want the precious so much? And he kills, spoiler alert, he kills his best friend who has it, and he wants it so bad because he has it, he has it and he takes it from him. And so I think that can reflect in our human behaviors, and that's what I try to point out in the book, that they're very, very much like us. And I think Tolkien understood human behavior really, really well. And I think we get the good and the bad of hobbits and humans in his characters.
So I always took the precious as greed. It was power.
I think it can be, I wouldn't want to say it's like a one-to-one correspondence. It means this. I think Tolkien is intentional not to do that stuff. I would tend to suggest that it's whatever that thing is in your life that becomes that. And it is often greed. It is often power. It can be anything that consumes us. Often greed, power, the desire for power.
When I think of the Shire, I think of community. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I used to think of the garden.
Well, that too.
Yeah, pretty much it's like Eden. This mythological, this is what we should have done, this is how we should have lived kind of place, right?
Yeah, I would say it's, and I point this out in the book, that it's like less idyllic than that. I think some of the hobbits are xenophobic, and they have those kind of insular lives. A lot of them lead insular lives, and I think Tolkien was intentional by, like, in the first page, he already has gossip. He already has hobbits who are gossiping about others who are like 50 miles away. And I think that's just so human. Like, oh, I don't know those people. They're very strange. Don't trust them. They're outsiders. They're foreigners. And it's like, well, they're still from the Shire. Well, they're still foreigners. It's like, how relevant is that today?
Yeah, so relevant.
Yeah, but I love the Shire. I mean, it is obviously where I would want to live, and I want to burrow right into Bag End. That's fine.
Well, I actually watched the Tolkien Society review of your book, and I loved how.
No, that's not already out. No.
Yeah.
No one's told me the Tolkien Society.
Yeah. 30-minute review.
That was a YouTube channel.
Oh, it was under
Yeah.
the Tolkien Society.
It's Tolkien lore.
Oh,
It's
okay.
his channel. No, the Tolkien Society hasn't gotten their review. That'd be news to me, and I would stop this stream and I'd go read it. I'm terrified to get that one.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen then. But they were talking about how you really were embodying the Hobbits with your gardening and your pictures. And I think that, if one of the things I'm going to hold on to is the community and getting back to needing to live just on, within our community and having the fresh foods and having all of those things. There's so many times I have thought to myself, if I could just go out and garden, then I wouldn't have to work. So, a chicken in the backyard, someone else could do, but it's those types of things that bring the community that are so relevant now. What else can you give us as far as the wisdom that would help us in our day-to-day lives?
I talk a lot about loss and suffering, and I know BK can touch on this, and Tom, based on your books, can touch on this. I think Tolkien gives us a lot to chew on when it comes to suffering and loss. And one thing that I talk about is holding loosely onto things and others, and our ideas to hold loosely, because we're going to find in life that those things they might be taken away from us. They might be, we might lose them in some way. And how are we going to, what are we going to do, and how are we going to be on the other side of that? And I talk about, and I equate two things: the scouring of the Shire. This isn't in the films, but when in the books, when the hobbits come back from Mordor and all is well, the Shire is, it's industrialized and it's laid to waste, and the old mill is replaced by a new industrial mill, and the hobbits have to cleanse the land of orcs and Saruman and the ruffians. And in a way, we had the same sort of thing, and I use an analogy here with the campfire that burned down Paradise, California, a couple years ago in 2018.
Yeah.
And Michael Machuga, he's my best friend, and we had a garden that we did for 5 years. His home was lost. 80% of the town was gone, and we had to rebuild after that, and we had to experience what that loss is like. And so I think there's wisdom there in this literature and obviously Tolkien lost most of his friends in World War I. He experienced this firsthand, like the utter disgusting tragedy that is war. Nothing worse than World War I. Like chemical warfare, the introduction of that, like what are the tunnels, what do you call them? The bunkers that they had to, just running into machine gun fire, like all this kind of stuff. Like, so Tolkien understood suffering and lived on the other side of it. All of his great literature comes on the other side of it. And so I think there's wisdom to be found there, because we all suffer in one way or another. Some worse than others, but we all taste it.
Yeah, as I was doing some research, I found, and I think it's Gandalf, where he says the end is not the end. And having just suffered a very deep loss, that gave me joy, that gave me peace. So that did help. What gets you, and this is for anyone, are there daily things that you encounter that you have been able to deal with better because of Tolkien?
Does anyone else want to go first? I want to open it up to y'all.
Go for it, BK.
No, I want to hear the expert. Go ahead, man.
I'm not. No, I don't use the expert.
I'll take it. So, all of my children, full disclosure, I have like 3 different generations, right? But I read to them going to sleep. I read every one of them. I read the Hobbit series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of deep in them, right? And I think the thing from Tolkien that I hold most dearly, and yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, so I don't have to say Tolkien. I can say Tolkien because that we mispronounce everything. That's right. We mispronounce things with pride. So just leave
there you go.
But the fact that story, the power of story, and that stories the question, is this true, is irrelevant. The question is, what kind of story are we in, right? And what role are we playing in the story at this moment, in this page, on this page? You know what I mean? So that, just holding the fact that I am caught up in a story helps me not get too serious about my own self and about what I'm going through right now, you
I like
know, and it helps orient me when other characters run in and out of my life, you know.
I like that.
Hmm.
Matt?
I think that the review that you referred to earlier, they initially said that it's obvious this author loves gardening, and so I would have to. I was like, I'm glad that came through. I mean, it's obvious my favorite character is Sam. Um, I emphasize ecology and gardening in the book. Um, I love that Sam was called the chief hero by Tolkien himself, and so I just think that that practice, if anyone asks like what are your spiritual practices, I would say gardening is first and foremost, because it helps me slow down and be really present and have to be really patient with plants. My friend Mike says you, I mean he likens spiritual development. He says you can't pull on a corn stalk to make it grow any faster, so you just have to allow things to be what they are and be present with them. And I think seeing in such a great epic as Lord of the Rings, to be able to have some of Tolkien's love of the earth and gardening, simple things like that come through in this great epic. It's a great mythology. There's lore throughout. There's adventure, all this kind of stuff. To have like these simple things be like, oh, the chief hero is a gardener, who literally like after the events they change his name to Gardener. Because they revere him as a gardener. Like to have that come through is really cool to me because I totally resonate with that. And it helps me slow down in life and be present.
We all need that.
And how prescient is that, right? Because we're in a moment, we're in an ecological moment where the planet is like, hey, you guys, all right, you throw so much garbage around, I've got to readjust, right? Mm-hmm. So the very planet itself is saying, all right, I don't need these humans on me. And the notion of gardening is kind of like gardening is kind of like Gaia, right? It's like, no, this is a living planet that we're on.
Yeah.
And we as living sentient beings, I mean, if we're truly wise, we are going to build and develop our relationship with it. And the opposite of that in Tolkien is doing what? They're burning up trees. They got industry going. And the hell with the forest, right? Let's make, let's make even new beings, and it's all about metal and weapons and things like that. That's the antithesis of the garden, right? And how much of a reflection of Tolkien's own life, war versus let's come home, let's get back in touch with the earth, let's rebuild and let's live, So, I mean, we need that lesson today.
Huge.
More than ever, yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go back to something Matthew said earlier when he was talking about the hobbits returning from their adventure and finding the village different than it was. I think one of the lessons, it's an everyday lesson, but kind of a big life lesson as well, is that when we go on some adventure, when we go through some tragic experience or have some mountaintop high, we tend to think that when we come off the mountain or come back from the adventure or go through the deep sorrow and tragedy, that we'll come back to the way things used to be, how they were good. But life just doesn't work like that.
No.
You never come back home to the exact same home. Yes, you may return to some similarities to the past. And I think in the world we live in, there are some people who yearn for the perfect yesterday, who want us as a society or as a local group or as an individual to get back to when it was right. And there's no getting back. I think that's one of the lessons of this. There's no getting back to exactly the way things were. We're always moving forward. Things always change.
Well, and especially you, because Like, I have moved around so much.
Yeah.
And coming back to areas that I used to live in or to friends that I used to associate with, I see that I'm different, but they're not. So, those types of things come into play too.
Yeah, it's like going back to a high school reunion and realizing everybody's different. You don't
Right?
go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
Well,
So, again, I take so much information from Stephen Colbert, but one of the reasons why he loves Tolkien so much is because of its alignment with religion. And he is such a practicing Catholic. Other than the dualism of the good and the bad, how else does it align to religions?
I think Tolkien created what if you found it out in the desert in a cave somewhere and you just thought it was a religious writing, it would pass for a mythology.
Mm.
So I think he understands how to build a world that could have actually been built by human beings, and so I think the beautiful part of it is it's not like religion, and we get it mixed up in evangelicalism and any sort of fundamentalism that like your religious text is univocal. God wrote it. I believe it. That settles it. The end of the. You're not taking. You don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with God or the Bible or whatever, right? Take it up with God. And Tolkien's world, he would say like, I don't know to as an answer to questions, because we don't have, like, if you ask them about the wizards, the blue wizards, not Gandalf or Saruman, these other blue wizards, if you ask him questions about that, he may just say, we don't have any information on them. So he created a world in which he didn't inject himself into the narrative. He allowed it to like kind of build naturally in a way. And I think that's the genius of him. And so I think we have those same sort of things in religion, that if like good religion, we would say, I don't know a lot.
Yeah.
And we would say, this is our opinion. He would have like the theology of the elves, which includes debate and discussion in the way rabbis would discuss and debate things in Judaism. And so I think what we need to understand is that no matter what our faith tradition is, it has to leave room for dialogue and discussion and debate, and not be too rigid about something. And Tolkien didn't give us rigidity in his texts, and I think good religion would also not give us rigidity. And then we fuck it up.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, when I learned that the Protestant Reformation added that the church must constantly be reforming, I was like, did every evangelical leader forget this or miss this or something? Come on now. BK, how do you see it align with religion, or do you?
Yeah, no, I want to pick up on a little bit of what Thomas was saying. So there is when we fall back into these notions of the idealized past, right? Imaginations or manufactured fantasies of some idyllic past is as bad as some idealized fantasy of a wonderful future somewhere, right? Some time when everything's going to be okay because Superman or Jesus is going to come and everything's going to make it all right.
Yeah.
When what Tolkien does well is drop us in the messy right here, right now, And how do we negotiate the right here, right now? How do we get caught up in things that are much bigger than us, right? Often being ignorant of, our own role. But most, I think what one of the things that is most important in his work and has a religious connection is the ignorance that the characters have of their own character, right? Mm-hmm. And as readers, we latch onto some characters and we think, oh, this is a good person, and then you realize, oh, he was not a good person. So just this, we have this, we're on this adventure not only of discovering what's outside of us and how it works outside of us, but really the real journey is discovering what's inside of us, right? Who we are inside. And then as we discover that, we are in relationship with other people for whom very often we just make assumptions about, right? It's like at the when in the Fellowship of the Rings, when they're at the table, the elves don't like these folk and these folk don't like that, and the Hobbit's just like, I don't know anything, but I'll do it, right? I don't have these historical biases. I don't have all this energy. I haven't fought in all these wars and have all these opinions, but I see there's a problem. I'll just do it, right? And so this honesty, if we were honest as religionists, as believers, as people of faith, like Matt said, we'd be saying, I don't know a lot. But not that the magic and the power of Tolkien is not just that the question we don't know, but it's after we say we don't know, there's a let's figure it out, let's figure this out together, because if we don't figure it out together, we're going to get killed, right? So that's good.
I think there's so much power in I don't know. I think it's vulnerability. I think it opens to learning. When you claim infallibility or to know everything, there's no room. So if that's one thing that would come across to anybody, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you have to say?
Well, I think if you come to Tolkien or the Hobbits and you're looking for a systematic theology, a lot of talk about what divine omnipotence means or aseity or what God knows or how God loves, you're going to be sorely disappointed because Tolkien isn't that kind of a thinker. In fact, I would say there are a variety of models of God. In other words, different ways religions have thought about God. And Tolkien's work can fit with a lot of those models, maybe not all of them, but you can have a lot of different models of God. Come to Tolkien, read his stuff and say, yeah, this can kind of fit my model. He doesn't talk about the specifics that I like, but my other friend, let's say, I'm not a Roman Catholic, so I'll say my Roman Catholic friend, it could probably fit his theology as well. It's that fundamental that it's widely accessible.
Which is kind of anti-religion, right? Stay off our shire. So Matthew, give me some more wisdom.
How much time do we have?
27 minutes. We got enough.
I think that Tom touched on it earlier. The call to adventure. I'll say a theme that I have throughout is have balance with that as well, because I think if we adventure too much and we never set down any sort of roots, it seems that we can burn out quicker. And I mean, that's just personally for me. I know a lot of people like just to travel around. I know there's like these influencers on Instagram or whatever who live in a van and travel around for years and years, and that's cool too. But eventually it seems like everyone's like, okay, now I got to slow down though. I mean, I gotta find a place to kind of put my feet up for a little bit. And I think where we see some of the Hobbits' misstep is that I think Bilbo, for instance, he needs to get out on another holiday at the start of the Fellowship. It's like he spent way too long at home without adventuring. And there wasn't the balance. It's like he needed an extreme adventure and then stayed in the Shire for a long, long time and then needed to never come back again. And so I think balance is key. I found that out. Like there's a time for adventuring and a new thing. And then there's a time to like sit back and reflect on it and work that new thing until it's not a new thing anymore. I mean, if we're always doing new things, we'll never be a master of anything. If we like, and this is my one regret of like being a musician is that I became really average at a lot of instruments. I could pick it up and be like, oh, I play that and I play that, but I'm professional level at none of them. And so it's like I never set down any roots. It's like I'm decent at piano and I can play a tune, but I can't I'm not all over the place. Same thing with all the instruments. So it's like if I had a home in that area, then I could be like, oh yeah, I'm like a professional level pianist instead of like okay at it.
I can play bars.
Yeah, I can. Give me a couple of notes to play. I'll play it. I'll learn it real quick. It's fine. Yeah.
So this is totally an assumption. but I have the feeling that there's no women around. Is that because that's my problem with the hero's journey. In fact, he had said that a woman's journey is to be a mother, and that's it. So it always had to be a man.
Who's it? Campbell said that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
When asked why there was no women, and he said
Oh.
that the woman's journey is motherhood.
Isn't it?
Right? I mean, I love Justice Campbell. Don't get me wrong, but that's a
Yeah.
huge problem I have. Where are there any women represented in Tolkien's writings?
Yeah, there are. They're underrepresented. Well, I would say that we have in the modern age, and for good reason, we care more about representation, and that's a good thing. But it's not something. It is problematic. The question also, why aren't there people of color in the Lord of the Rings? Or when they are, people have equated them to the bad guys. The men from the East and things like that. People have made those equations. Now Tolkien himself was anti-racist, but it doesn't reflect. It's like when we look back and we judge something with modern eyes, it can kind of get cringy sometimes.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it's going to happen with probably all of us in 100 years if we haven't burnt up because of climate change. Then they'll probably look at some of the things that we wrote and be like, oh, well, they were bass backwards back then. and that might happen.
You're way too inclusive. So, so reading, it's not like watching a movie, you're reading and you don't realize all the characters, don't have your complexion. So that's
Sam was a part of the Hobbits that were darker skinned, and obviously Sean Astin doesn't. Sean Astin's wonderful, but doesn't necessarily reflect what Tolkien himself wrote about that type of Hobbit. But as far as women, I would say they're underrepresented. But there are women heroes in Tolkien's legendarium. But I would say, I mean, if I had I wish one of at least maybe half of the four main hobbits, if they were women, that'd be fantastic. Maybe if Merry and Pippin were women, that'd be great. Well, Tolkien's work goes to public domain in 17 years. I guess you can write fan fiction at that point. And not a moment before, because I don't want you getting sued.
BK, I think that was really interesting to say in reading that you don't see their skin colors. I'd never thought of that before, but that has to give you some ownership of it, right?
Yeah, so you have the ability to forget that you're objectified, it's other folk remind me of that, but in our own spaces, we're just normal people, right? I'd say just to mention back when I was the only African American, we were Negroes at the time, only African American in a classroom from kindergarten to 8th grade. All I'd look out and see was them, and I was the fly in the milk, but I didn't realize that, or the effect, or what was happening to me till years later. And I think reading invites the story is happening in your head.
Yeah,
right?
Theater of the mind.
In your eye, not before your eyes.
Yeah.
And because it's in your head, you manipulate it in ways that are palatable. So it's why I write myself, because some things that I say, man, if I come and say it before whatever I say, they're looking at me before it comes out of my mouth, right? Not consciously. They're not consciously saying, oh, that's a black guy from the ghetto. I got to filter what he's saying. But when they read what I write, they don't know anything. They don't know how I look at all. It's kind of like something that I don't know if Doc. I don't know whether you're old enough to remember the radio, but when I used to
Power wasn't on when I was born.
Say what? Maybe you had this experience. When you're listening to the radio, you like some of your favorite DJs or whatever, you have this image of what they look like. And then you see them in person, they're like, oh, that's not who I had pictured.
Yeah.
The same thing with reading. You just got in the story, and they're all cool people.
Well, they say that that's why movies flop so much on good books, is because everybody had their own theater of the mind, and someone else's theater of the mind is making the movie.
Right.
Yeah. Can I go back to I want to like point out that Galadriel is a woman who I think she's an elf, and I think it gets missed on a lot of people. And admittedly, the first time I read the books, and it was missed on me too, just because I didn't know the lore as well. But when the Fellowship is in Lothlorien and meets Galadriel, and she has that test, right, where if she's given the ring, what she would become, and she has to denounce it because of the power. She would do it for great good, just like Gandalf, and has to give that up. In giving that up, she also gives up everything she knows. All of Lothlorien is held together, and it's fairy and it's fantasy and everything. All the mythos of Lothlorien, when you step into that land, is held together by their rings, which are contingent upon the One Ring. And so if the One Ring is destroyed, all of the elf power, their whole mythic, their whole mystique fades, and which is why they leave Middle Earth. And so when she gives up that and then sends Frodo and the Fellowship on their way with gifts, she knows that if they succeed in their quest, she has to leave her home, and because they have to diminish and head out of Middle Earth. So I think that is like the ultimate self-sacrifice that Tolkien, has in his books, that theme. And I think it gets missed on because she's not like a part of the Fellowship that goes along with them. That gets missed, and I'm glad that there's a woman who does that and steps into that role that so many of Tolkien's great characters do.
I just, like I said, in prepping for this show, I was thinking of all of my female friends and all of my male friends, and I've never heard a female friend say, "Oh my God, I love Tolkien." My male friends do.
I've got a wonderful launch team full of women who it was mainly women at my Zoom launch party.
Nice.
Yeah, they were totally repping. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I was like, okay, so what is this about it? And I just assumed that it was a lack of representation, because women like to see those things.
Yeah, and they should, and I think that's great. And another, I mean, it's interesting that you point that out, because even the men, the so-called alpha men in Tolkien's world are like reading poetry and reciting old songs and
love it.
Like they're total softies, which is wonderful. I think the masculinity of Tolkien is not what we consider. Like, we have this toxic masculinity view in so many ways, but Tolkien's masculinity is a lot softer and includes a lot more of the feminine.
I love that.
She's still not going to read
it.
I will.
We're reeling her in.
I just can't watch the movie because I literally tried like 4 times. I fall asleep every time. So, Tom, what were you going to say?
Well, I was thinking about what Matt was saying and thinking about another theme that Matt picks up in his book that I think is important. And that is about how big things can occur from out of the way, small, unnoticed places or people. And in this case, the Hobbits. The Hobbits are the little people. They're not the ones who are the strongest or the smartest or whatever. And even among the Hobbits, in which what's the main guy who's carrying the ring? All of a sudden, I forgot his name.
Frodo.
Frodo, yeah. In which Frodo is sort of kind of the hero, because he's the one who takes the ring and eventually throws it in the flame. But I mean, he tries to, and then anyway. Really, the hero. I'm with Matthew and Tolkien. I think the real hero is Sam, who is accompanying him, who's playing the supportive role, and I think Tolkien does this in such a way that you don't see this in a lot of other, blockbuster movies today. Usually the hero is the strongest, the most beautiful, the whatever. But the hero for Tolkien is not that person, at least most of the time. It's the underdog, and that's, I think, an attractive theme.
The support. We all need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what Tolkien even problematizes even more than we're probably comfortable with is that, and Gandalf kind of prophesized this, that Gollum has a part to play. And if you really think about it, without Gollum, Frodo doesn't throw the ring in the fire. And I think that if you were writing a blockbuster film like that, that would not be the ending you would write as the, it's not going to be a Marvel ending, right?
Right.
Like the hero is the hero, and he might, or she might, or they might stop at the precipice and turn back, but eventually they'll do the right thing.
Hopefully.
And well, I mean, in most stories, and I think the fact that Frodo actually, in the end, like Frodo does as much as Frodo can, but even then, like, and I think it's to emphasize the fact that mercy and pity, when it's almost not the right decision or the most popular decision, like they should have killed Gollum a long time ago. He's way too untrustworthy. But the fact that they didn't actually leads to evil destroying itself in the end. And I think Tolkien wants to make that point.
We can only hope that happens here.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, not
yeah.
that chance. But that's the question that I'm still wrestling with, right? How to overcome evil without engaging evil one's own self. And the stories and the movies we're looking at today, they just acquiesce to evil just automatically. So, well, okay, here's a question you can ask, Doc. So, why did Gandalf pick Bilbo? Oh, that's a good question. And why did Gandalf pick Bilbo to be the thief, right? To be the burglar, right? That's a crazy question. Now, you have no idea why that's a good question, huh?
Like, I am hoping you'll tell me.
No, it's
what does that mean?
Yeah. So who's Bilbo? Bilbo's this guy minding his business, has a happy life, and here he gets invited into, crazy. And first he kind of endures this, kind of like, okay, I gotta play host to a bunch of strangers who are not necessarily they don't have good manners, but okay, I could be a good host anyway, and they eat him out of house and home, right? And he's like, okay, that was expensive. And then the next thing you know, he's like, I'm on an adventure, right? I'm supposed to go with these guys. And is it a metaphor? And Matt is going to jump in, but how do we react and how do we embrace when these things that just happen, we get these knocks on our doors, we get these phone calls, and our whole world changes, right? We didn't expect it. We didn't want it. We tried to deal with this interruption and this intrusion in our lives, hoping that, okay, I'll deal with this intrusion and then I'll go on with my life. I'll clean up the dishes, I'll go back to the grocery store and things will get back to normal. But no, they never will. And, Matt, how do you embrace that? How do you see that as like part of our metaphor?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think the way Tolkien does it is Bilbo has a Tookish side from the Took family and a Baggins side. And so he has this kind of dualism in him. The Baggins side is the stay-at-home, the homebody. And the Tookish side, that family is notorious historically as being adventurers. And Tolkien describes the Tookish side waking up in Bilbo and then him running out the door. And I think that's a great metaphor for us. Like, I think deep within us, there is this entrepreneurial, adventurous spirit. We've all at some point, we either wrote the first word of our book, said the first word of our podcast, signed the paperwork to become a publishing company, which I've done recently. Like, that's an event. Like, I never wanted to be a business owner in my life. Never. I didn't go to school for business. And then it landed in my lap. I mean, Quire Publishing landing in my lap is like the dwarves is showing up. Ralph was Gandalf writing his initial on the door, and then all hell broke loose. And it's been fantastic. And at first, there's just something inside of us, I think, that has that adventurous, entrepreneurial spirit. And I think to be present and know yourself and to do the hard work of like, who am I? What is this all about? To ask the existential questions and find out about yourself. I think we will tap into that, I guess. There's some sort of mysterious, like, something inside of you that it's a gut feeling, it's an intuition, it's being present in the moment, and the present moment just revealing things to us. Buddhists talk about that all the time. So I think there's something there that if we're present, I mean, why didn't Bilbo like going on adventures? I make the analogy, it's like kids who don't like vegetables. It's like, because it's foreign to me, so it's disgusting until you realize it's really not.
Yeah, and there's some things too. So from when I lived in Brooklyn, I left the city because every time you walked out your door, you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know whether you're going to make it back home. You didn't know whether you were going to get robbed, accused, whether they're going to rob you with a knife or a gun. You didn't know whether you're going to end up fighting somebody. When you got on the train, you just didn't know what was happening. And there's some of that too. You never know what happens when you walk out of your door, and that's part of what's going on there too.
With my book, I realized that, I mean, it just sounds so simple, but I realized that anytime you jump, you will never land in the same spot. I mean, I was just looking for information. I was just looking to find the truth in some way, and it completely changed my life. And I realized that even though I wasn't looking to change, just by simply jumping, I was. I like the part, like I said, especially because of this time for me and the loss that I have incurred. What kind of wisdom can you guys give as far as people who are enduring losses and the radical changes of life?
Well, it's hard because one of the critiques that someone gave me of the book is that when I talk about theodicy, and which is like the idea of how do we talk about a good God in the midst of suffering, right?
Yeah.
Is that like oftentimes there's no answer that we can give with people, and sometimes like suffering just sucks. and all you can be is, we've talked about community as a theme. I think that is super important to have some sort of community, whether it's family by blood or family by, adoption, or family, just that's a word you use for your best friends and your closest people. Whatever that is for you, like, have community. And I truly believe that on the other side of suffering is the end of suffering. And I don't know what that means, but I know that Tolkien wrote about a happy time where there's no suffering. I know the Buddhists talk about the end of suffering. I know that the true Christian message is about the end of suffering. So I have hope that is true.
Me too.
To quote Gandalf, it may be a fool's hope, but it's hope.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's all we have sometimes.
Sometimes it's all we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to let Thomas say something. He's a big theologian about suffering and theodicy.
Yeah, well, I do think a lot about that, and I've written a lot about that. I don't think Tolkien gives us an answer.
Right.
Unless it's something like what Matt said, and that is, there's something about the fellowship that doesn't erase the pain and suffering. It doesn't mean that the evil was really good if you just looked at it in the right way.
Right.
But there's something about the fellowship of people walking with us and us walking with others that it doesn't solve it, but I don't know, it's redeemed in some way, to use a Christian word.
I get that, because while I isolated myself because of the trauma and the pain involved, that phone ringing and texting and messages on Facebook and all of the people that came out to support me got me through it. So, even if it's not within your immediate physical space, having that community out there to say, hey, we want you to stick around. I know this is hard. Enabled that.
Yeah.
So it's very important on all levels.
Yeah. So suffering is in itself a declaration
Of love.
for the opposite of suffering, right? The pain that we endure and the the anger or whatever the emotion, the name of the emotion that comes with the suffering that tells us this is not right. This is not what I want, is a declaration that there is something other than this, right?
I
That
like
I
that.
don't, and so it's like I don't deserve this, I don't want this, I don't welcome this, which is a declaration is that the opposite is somewhere,
Yeah.
and I've moved in my life from God on this throne, right? Declaring things to a long time that Jesus was just like laying in the grass smoking a joint, right? I needed that Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But now I see God as kind of like a trainer, right? My trainer says, all right, we're going to do this exercise for 15 minutes and or 15 seconds or 60 seconds. That's what 60 seconds. We're going to do this. And you're like, all right, I know this is good for me. I don't want to do it, but okay, he's my coach. I got to do it. So 15 seconds in, you're like, okay, I can do this. 30 seconds you're in, I'm like tired of this. 45 seconds in, I'm going to absolutely die. And I hate this guy, right? And then 60 seconds, it's like, okay, that's over. And somewhere later in life, you're like, I'm glad I have that muscle, because I needed that muscle at this point, years after the pain. So we hope in suffering, we hope to not accept suffering as what you deserve is a cry for that which is opposite of that suffering. And it is a search and it is a hope that one day I'm not going to have this pain, because I want the opposite of it, I think.
I love that.
You and I have talked in the past, Sherry, that I have the unconventional view that there is a God of love, but this God is not omnipotent.
Mhm.
This God doesn't have the capacity to control anyone or anything.
Yeah.
And I can actually make a link to that idea in the Lord of the Rings, and here it goes.
Okay.
If there's one ring to rule them all that everyone wants, and this is the ring of power to rule them all, and that power is ultimately destroyed at the end, then perhaps we should stop thinking that there is such a ring that rules everyone and all things. That is not doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean there isn't small acts of kindness, as Gandalf would say, and those change the world.
I love that. Okay, fine. I'm reading this fucking book. And that is the final words of this show. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, you guys, for educating me and giving me all of this wisdom. I loved this show. Matthew, final words, and where can people find you?
Yeah, no, thank you for joining me, BK, Thomas, Sherry. It's been a blast. People can find me on Facebook, no longer on Twitter. I gave that up happily. I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well. Choir.com, Quoir.com. And then The Wisdom of Hobbits, you can find it on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and soon to be Audible. And look
a
at
beautiful cover. See if I can get that up there
Hey.
and make that.
Yeah, and actually,
there we
hold
go.
on.
Whoa.
And BK is going to get his when he comes to the launch party. BK is in Oakland and I'm in Chico, so not too far away.
Yeah, well, I need an actual book.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. Yeah. I know someone at the publishing company. We got you.
Do you? Awesome. Yeah, this is the book, everyone. Go buy it.
Yeah, it's available for pre-order. Yep.
It releases next week, right?
Yes. Yeah, the 14th.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody go pre-order Matthew's book and thank him for being a part of this show. BK.
Yeah,
any final words and where can people find you?
Yeah, you hit me up on Facebook, I'm not embarrassed since Matt said that too. Brian Woodson on Facebook. You could even email me. I'll write you back. I promise. Um, Choir. You could get me on choirs stuff. I don't know how to find me. How did you find me? Um, uh, uh, Read my book, Purple In. I love Tolkien. I love reading, and we have a world to save. So keep reading, keep thinking, keep loving.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas J. Ord, final words, and where can people find you?
Final words is thanks for this fellowship.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about Matt's excellent book. I think it's really important, and it's written in such a way that it's very accessible, has real, insights and gems for living, as well as exploring some big questions. So I heartily recommend it. You can find me in all those kinds of places BK mentioned, and my personal website is my full name, thomasjord.com.
For anyone on Facebook, all of their information, their links, their bios, everything is on the announcement. If you click on their picture, you can go see all of them. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I absolutely loved this show, and I feel smarter. And I have now another book to buy.
Thanks,
I will
Sherry.
talk to you all backstage. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks,
Hey,
Sherry.
bye.
All right, bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show, and I hope you got a bunch of wisdom out of it. Next week's show is the second show on what started the deconstruction of your faith, and we have a whole nother panel from last week's show. I want to thank everybody for watching and for joining in the conversation, and take this week to practice love, and as always, walk in love. Mwah. See you next week. Bye-bye.